It's no longer just about what's expensive. It's about what's vanishing, what's rotting faster, and what's been quietly switched out when no one was paying attention. Across the country, grocery stores are still open. But if you look closer, you'll see it. Fewer options, smaller packages, and foods that just don't taste, look, or last like they used to. It's not your imagining. In 2025, dozens of food items are quietly falling apart, either literally degrading in quality, being cut from shelves, or skyrocketing in price so quickly they may as well be gone already. Take olive oil, for example. What used to be a healthy kitchen staple is now being watered down with cheaper fillers, or frozen berries, once reliable and nutritious, now flagged for chemical contamination and foreign recall. Even essentials like eggs and milk are caught in a dangerous mix of rising costs, supply chain failures, and outright substitution. And what's worse, the most affected foods aren't the luxury items, they're the ones families rely on every week. So in today's video, we're breaking down the 15 food items collapsing the fastest in 2025, and what you need to know to stay ahead. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe for critical updates on food security and survival strategies. Hit like if you believe in staying one step ahead of the shortages. And stick around, because some of the items on this list might already be in your kitchen and already falling apart. Number 1, packaged deli meat. It used to be the easiest choice at the grocery store. Quick sandwich for lunch, grab some turkey slices, need to stretch a few meals. A pound of bologna or ham always did the trick. Packaged deli meats were cheap, tasty, and dependable. But in 2025, that convenience is quietly falling apart, and most people haven't even noticed yet. First, the quality. More and more brands are cutting corners. What used to be actual cuts of meat are now blends, processed trimming, bound together with fillers, artificial flavorings, and chemical preservatives. The texture's different, the color doesn't look right, and when you bite into it, there's an odd aftertaste that wasn't there a year ago. Behind the scenes, the industry is scrambling. Meat production costs have soared, and to stay competitive, manufacturers are thinning the slices, shrinking the packaging, and using cheaper additives to hold it all together. In some cases, you're paying more for less meat and more water weight. But the most alarming issue? Bacterial outbreaks. Several regional recalls in early 2025 were linked to contaminated deli meat sitting in transit too long due to ongoing transportation delays. Cold storage facilities are overburdened, and any slip in temperature control can lead to listeria, salmonella, or worse. That's not just unpleasant, that's potentially deadly. Even major brands haven't been immune. In fact, some of the trusted names have faced lawsuits and public backlash after independent labs found unsafe bacterial counts in sealed packages still well within their expiration dates. If you're stocking up for emergencies or building a long-term pantry, deli meat is no longer your friend. It spoils fast, loses texture in storage, and carries serious food safety risks. Even shelf-stable vacuum packs aren't immune. They've been reformulated too, often replacing real meat with soy protein blends and artificial binders. So if this is something your family leans on, now's the time to rethink your strategy. Look into canned meats, freeze-dried proteins, or even pressure-canned homemade alternatives, because the stuff in the refrigerated aisle, it's not what it used to be. And by the time most people realize that, they'll already be sick of it. Or just plain sick. Number 2, avocados. There was a time when avocados were everywhere. Toasts, smoothies, salads. This soft, creamy fruit became a symbol of modern, healthy living. But in 2025, something's changed. If you've tried buying avocados lately, you've probably felt it. Prices are climbing fast, and the avocados that are left, smaller, bruised, inconsistent. What's happening isn't just inflation, it's a full-blown supply crisis. The majority of America's avocados come from Mexico, but ongoing cartel violence, protection rackets, and blocked roads have disrupted the export pipeline. Even when avocados make it to the border, increased inspections and slowed trade are delaying shipments long enough to ruin freshness. Then there's the climate. Drought and extreme heat have hit avocado farms hard. Trees that once produced hundreds of fruits per season are now withering under unstable conditions. Farmers are either downsizing or abandoning avocado crops altogether, and what's left on the shelves, often picked too early, shipped too long, and sold at a premium. The texture is off, the ripening unpredictable. One week it's like a rock, the next it turns black overnight. You're paying double for something that feels like a gamble. Even worse, some grocery chains are quietly reducing their stock, focusing on items with longer shelf lives and less transport risk. Avocados don't handle long storage, poor handling. Well, they're fragile, high maintenance, and in a stressed food system, that's a losing combination. For preppers and budget-conscious families, avocados avocados are rapidly becoming a non-essential luxury. Their high cost, low reliability, and short lifespan make them nearly impossible to store or rely on long-term. So while they once represented health and abundance, avocados in 2025 are becoming something else entirely. Expensive, unreliable, and disappearing fast. If you're clinging to them as a staple, it might be time to let go. Because in this new economy, avocados aren't green gold anymore. They're just green risk. Number 3, organic milk. Healthy reputation, shaky future. For years, organic milk was the gold standard. Parents trusted it. Health-conscious shoppers swore by it. It wasn't just about avoiding pesticides or hormones. It felt like the safer, more ethical choice. But in 2025, the carton of organic milk in your fridge may be quietly turning into a symbol of just how unstable the food system has become. Let's start with the obvious: price. In most U.S. cities, organic milk now costs 60 to 80% more than it did 2 years ago. In some rural areas, it's become downright unaffordable. The reason? It's a perfect storm. Feed shortages, labor problems, rising fuel prices, and dairy farm shutdowns. Smaller, organic producers who already operate on thin margins are folding under the pressure. Then there's the availability. More and more shoppers are reporting empty dairy shelves or finding only conventional milk in stock. Organic milk. Production simply hasn't kept pace with demand, especially as families try to stock healthier options during uncertain times. But here's what's even more unsettling. Some brands have quietly changed their formulas. To stay profitable, a few are now using ultra-high temperature UHT processing to extend shelf life. On the surface, that sounds helpful, but many consumers are noticing the difference. The flavor is off, the texture slightly chalky. It's still labeled organic, but it doesn't taste or behave the same. And if you're storing for emergencies or long-term use, this matters. UHT milk may last longer unopened, but once it's opened, it spoils just as quickly as regular milk. You can't rely on it for real longevity unless you're freezing it or switching to powdered alternatives. Even trusted national brands are feeling the squeeze. Some have downsized their cartons while keeping prices steady. Others are importing organic milk powder from overseas to fill gaps in domestic production. Bottom line, if organic milk was once your go-to for safety and nutrition, it's time to reevaluate. The price is high, the supply is unstable, and in many ways what's in the carton just isn't what it used to be. In a crisis-driven economy, you need reliability, not labels. And right now, organic milk is struggling to deliver either. Number 4, frozen berries. From superfood to super risk. Once upon a time, frozen berries were the ultimate health hack. A bag in the freezer meant smoothies in seconds, easy desserts, and a guilt-free way to add antioxidants to your day. They were affordable, available year-round, and felt like one of the smartest things you could keep in your kitchen. But in 2025, that bag of mixed berries is carrying more risk than reward. It started quietly, a few strange recalls here and there. Then came the headlines: pesticide contamination, import violations, and even hepatitis A outbreaks traced back to foreign-grown frozen berries. Suddenly, something that used to be a symbol of clean eating is now raising red flags for families trying to eat safe. The root problem? Global sourcing. A massive percentage of the frozen berries on American shelves are imported from countries where quality control varies wildly. And as shipping delays, cost-cutting, and food safety enforcement become more strained, contaminated batches are slipping through the cracks more often. Climate instability is making it worse. Droughts, floods, and shifting growing seasons are slashing berry yields across the US and Europe, forcing companies to outsource further, sometimes to regions with weaker sanitation and inspection system. Meanwhile, prices have shot up. A simple bag of frozen blueberries that once cost $3.99 can now reach $6 or $7, depending on the brand. And that's if you can even find the one you trust in stock. To make matters worse, even the organic labels aren't a guarantee anymore. Multiple independent lab tests in early 2025 found residue of banned chemical in products labeled as organic, especially those imported in bulk and repackaged under U.S. brands. For preppers or health-conscious buyers, this presents a tough reality. You can't rely on frozen berries to be either safe or available long-term. And they're not shelf-stable. If the power goes out, they spoil fast. So what's the alternative? Dehydrated berries, freeze-dried fruit, shelf-stable powders. They may not have the same bite, but they'll last, and they won't carry the same invisible risks. In 2025, frozen berries still look sweet on the outside, but what's hidden underneath might not be worth the gamble. Number 5. Imported olive oil, the counterfeit crisis. Hiding in plain sight, olive oil used to be one of those rare grocery items that felt both indulgent and practical. It made meals healthier, added flavor, and lasted long enough to justify the price. But here's what most people don't realize in 2025. The olive oil you're buying may not be olive oil at all. It sounds dramatic, but it's true. In recent years, widespread fraud in the global olive oil trade has exploded. Trusted bottles on American shelves have been found to contain cut blends, mixed with cheaper oils like sunflower, soybean, or even canola. In some cases, the oil is deodorized and colored to mimic real extra virgin olive oil, and sold at full premium prices. This isn't just about taste. For families who rely on olive oil for cooking, clean eating, or heart-healthy diets, it's a serious betrayal. You're paying $12 or more for something that may not even come close to what it claims to be. Part of the issue is the shrinking supply. Southern Europe, especially Spain and Italy, two of the world's largest producers, have been hit hard by drought and heat waves. Olive harvests are down 30 to 50% in some regions, driving prices through the roof and putting pressure on companies to cut corners. To keep shelves stocked and margins intact, many brands now source from multiple countries, making it harder to track authenticity. A bottle might say, imported from Italy, but the olives could have been grown in Turkey, processed in Tunisia, and bottled in Spain. Good luck tracing the origin. And when supply chains stretch that far, quality control breaks down. Adulterate. Oil slips through. Nutritional values. The risk of oxidation and rancidity goes up, especially when the oil has spent weeks in hot shipping containers before reaching your kitchen. For preppers and home cooks alike, this is a red flag. Olive oil, once a pantry staple, is now a high-risk investment. If you still use it, look for certified domestic brands or consider alternatives like avocado oil or animal fats, which are more shelf-stable and harder to fake. Because in 2025, even something as pure as olive oil has been compromised. Number 6. Whole grain breads. The disappearing loaf. There's something deeply grounding about a good loaf of bread, especially whole grain, the kind that's dense, hearty, and full of texture. For years, it's been a go-to for health-conscious families. Toast it for breakfast, make sandwiches for lunch, pair it with soup for dinner. But in 2025, that familiar loaf is quietly slipping away, and no one's really talking about it. It starts with the ingredients. Whole grain wheat is becoming harder to source thanks to volatile weather, fertilizer shortages, and high export costs from key producers like Canada, Ukraine, and the U.S. Midwest. Farmers are switching to higher yield, lower quality crops just to survive, and that means fewer real grains making it into your bread. Then there's the cost. Manufacturers are facing skyrocketing prices for not just wheat, but packaging, labor, and even yeast. To make ends meet, they're cutting corners, diluting whole grains with refined flour, stretching batches with fillers, and reducing loaf size while keeping prices the same. That whole grain label? It doesn't mean what it used to. Taste and texture are changing too. Bread that once had weight and depth now feels lighter, more processed, almost like white bread in disguise. And for those who rely on whole grains for fiber and sustained energy, that shift is more than cosmetic. It's a nutritional downgrade. Shelf life is another problem. With fewer natural preservatives being used and a push to market cleaner breads, many whole grain loaves now go stale or mold faster than before. In a world where grocery trips are fewer and budgets tighter, that's a real issue. Some stores are even shrinking their whole grain options altogether. Where there used to be 6 or 7 choices, now you might see 2 or none, and artisan. Bakeries, once a reliable source, are struggling to stay open under rising costs. For long-term planners and preppers, this means rethinking how you store bread. Freezing is temporary. Learning to bake at home, especially with shelf-stable grain or flour, might be the only reliable path forward. Because in 2025, the whole grain loaf on your table is no longer guaranteed. It's becoming a luxury in disguise, and it's disappearing faster than we think. Number 7. Baby formula. Still scarce, still stressful. If you've ever had a hungry baby in your arms and nothing left in the can, you know the kind of panic that lives in the pit of your stomach. That panic? It never really left. Even in 2025, baby formula is still one of the most fragile, inconsistent products on the shelf. You'd think that after the shortages of 2022-2023, the system would have stabilized. But here's the truth. While supplies have somewhat recovered in major cities, many smaller towns and rural areas are still seeing regular outages. Parents often have to visit 3 or 4 stores just to find one can, and sometimes they leave empty-handed. Production isn't the only issue. Raw ingredients used in formula, like dairy proteins, specialty oils, and vitamins, are being disrupted by international supply issues. And when one piece of the puzzle goes missing, entire batches get delayed or cancelled. Then there's the pricing. Even with more stock appearing appearing on shelves, prices are 35 to 50% higher than just 2 years ago. Bulk buying used to be a savings strategy, but many stores have quietly reinstated purchase limits to prevent hoarding, leaving families with fewer options and more anxiety. Some parents have turned to imported formula alternatives, but those come with their own risks. Regulatory standards vary by country, and not all international brands are rigorously tested or approved for U.S. infants. In a survival or prepping context, that's dangerous. And let's be honest, this isn't just about product shortages. It's about trust. After what happened during the last formula crisis, many families no longer feel confident that the system will protect their most vulnerable. For parents or caregivers trying to plan ahead, this means thinking beyond the store. Shelf. Consider shelf-stable powdered formulas with long expiration dates, or even talk to pediatricians about safe emergency alternatives. Because in 2025, baby formula is still too unstable to rely on, and when your child depends on it, maybe isn't good enough. Number 8. Chocolate, the sweet treat, turning bitter. There's something timeless about chocolate, a piece after a long day, a gift to lift someone's spirits. Even in the toughest times, it's been a little escape, one small luxury that makes life feel normal again. But in 2025, chocolate is quietly becoming a casualty of global crisis. What was once affordable, abundant, and emotionally comforting is now on a slow, bitter decline. At the heart of it is a massive cocoa shortage. West Africa, home to nearly 70% of the world's cocoa, is facing devastating crop losses. Extreme heat, prolonged drought, and rampant crop disease have slashed yields by nearly half in some regions. Farmers are abandoning their field, unable to keep up with demand or survive the costs of increasingly unpredictable harvests. The ripple effect is everywhere. Prices for raw cocoa are at record highs, and that's directly hitting chocolate manufacturers. To stay profitable, many brands have quietly shrunk their bars, reduced cocoa content, or substituted synthetic flavoring. Some have replaced real cocoa butter with cheaper vegetable oils, resulting in products that look the same but taste far from familiar. And for higher quality chocolate, think organic, dark, or fair trade, the price hikes are even steeper. What was once a $3 indulgence might now cost $6 or more. For many families, that means chocolate is no longer an everyday item. It's a once-in-a-while splurge. But here's what most people don't see. This isn't temporary. Experts warn that the cocoa crisis is structural, not seasonal. Without major climate intervention and global investment in sustainable farming, chocolate could become the next luxury commodity, scarce, expensive, and mostly out of reach for average consumers. For preppers, that matters more than you might think. Chocolate isn't just a treat, it's high-calorie, shelf-stable, and excellent for morale in emergency. A small bar in a bug-out bag can lift spirits when everything else feels heavy. So if you've got chocolate in your pantry, treat it like gold. Because moving forward, that sweet little square may be harder and pricier to replace than anyone imagined. Number 9. Wild-caught salmon. Once premium, now problematic, there was a time when wild-caught salmon represented everything good about clean, natural eating. Rich in omega-3s, lean protein, and flavor, this wasn't just food, it was fuel. You felt healthier just putting it on your plate. But in 2025, that bright pink fillet is facing a darker reality. Let's start with what's happening in the ocean. Overfishing, warming waters, and collapsing ecosystems have severely damaged wild salmon populations in Alaska, the Pacific Northwest, and parts of Canada. Entire runs have dropped by 40 to 60% in the last 5 years, forcing stricter catch limits and driving up costs across the board. That scarcity has made wild-caught salmon increasingly rare and incredibly expensive. In many places, prices have doubled since 2023. What used to be a $9 fillet is now pushing $18 or more, making it unreachable for most families. But the bigger concern? Contamination. With pollution levels rising, wild salmon are being exposed to high levels of mercury, microplastics, and industrial runoff. Testing has revealed alarming traces of toxins even in premium cuts, and the more the fish struggle to survive in these stressed environments, the more their health, and ours, is put at risk. At the same time, some brands have started blurring the lines between wild-caught and farmed salmon. Labels like natural or sustainably harvested are being slapped on fish raised in open-net farms, fish that often receive antibiotics, artificial color, and highly processed feed. It's misleading at best, deceptive at worst. And here's the hard truth. Even frozen wild-caught salmon isn't immune. Delays in cold chain logistics mean more fillets are thawing and refreezing during transport, leading to texture loss, taste, changes and bacterial risk by the time it reaches your freezer. For preppers and health-conscious shoppers, the message is clear. Don't rely on wild-caught salmon for long-term nutrition. It's unstable in supply, risky in quality, and increasingly unaffordable. If you want the benefits without the gamble, consider canned or freeze-dried alternatives with verified sourcing, or shift toward more sustainable proteins that don't come with a side of toxicity, because the fish we once trusted is now swimming upstream against too much. Number 10. Pet food. Hidden shortages in the aisle. Nobody talks about if you've ever stared into the eyes of your dog or cat while the shelves were bare. You already know. Pet food isn't just a convenience. It's a responsibility. And in 2025, that responsibility is getting harder to keep. Pet owners across the country are still dealing with the fallout of what started as a quiet inconvenience. Missing brands, limited flavors, suddenly switching foods without warning. But now it's clear, pet food is becoming another victim of a collapsing supply chain, and one few are paying attention to until it's too late. Behind the scenes, the problems are layered. Meat byproducts, grains, and even synthetic vitamins used in most pet foods are in short supply, especially those sourced from overseas. Combine that with rising shipping costs, labor shortages in processing plants, and stricter import regulations, and you've got a perfect storm. The result? Prices are up 25% to 40% since early 2023. Bag sizes have shrunk. Formulas have changed without warning. Some popular brands are quietly substituting ingredients, leading to digestive issues, allergic reactions, and reduced nutritional quality, all without clearly stating it on the label. And for families with pets on prescription or specialty diets, the situation is even more dire. Veterinary-approved formulas are often out of stock for weeks, if not months. That puts older pets, sensitive breeds, or animals with medical needs in serious jeopardy. Some pet owners have started stockpiling kibble or turning to homemade food, but that comes with its own risks. Homemade diets without professional guidance can leave pets nutrient deficient, especially if certain vitamins or minerals, like taurine for cats, are overlooked. Even canned food isn't immune. Aluminum shortages and production delays have led to unpredictable availability, and let's not forget, in a true crisis, pet food might be one of the first things to vanish entirely, just like toilet paper did back in 2020. So if you care about your animals, now's the time to plan ahead. Build a backup supply, rotate stock, research alternatives, because your pets depend on you, and the pet food aisle in 2025 is no longer dependable. Number 11. Breakfast cereals. Smaller boxes, bigger problems. For millions of families, breakfast cereal has always been the quick fix. Pour, add milk, done. It's not gourmet, but it's dependable, especially on busy mornings. But in 2025, that box of cereal sitting in your pantry isn't what it used to be. Let's start with the obvious. Shrinkflation. Boxes are smaller, portions are lighter, but the prices higher than ever. A standard-size box that used to feed a family for a week now barely lasts 3 days and costs almost double what it did just 2 years ago. But it's not just the size. Formulas are changing too, to offset rising ingredient costs. Especially grains, corn syrup, and processed oils, manufacturers are reformulating with cheaper fillers and less real nutrition. Even cereals marketed as whole grain or fortified have seen a quiet drop in fiber, protein, and vitamin content. Then there's the sugar problem. While many brands are cutting back on sweetness, they're replacing it with synthetic sweeteners and additives that weren't there before. The taste is different, the digestion is different, and sensitive kids are reacting. For long-term planners or preppers, cereal used to be a reliable shelf stabilizer. But with these changes, it's becoming less nutritious, less filling, and a lot less cost-effective. The box still looks familiar, but what's inside? That's what's slowly falling apart. Number 12. Bottled juices. When fruit isn't refruiting. There's something about bottled juice that just feels wholesome. A glass of orange juice in the morning, apple juice for the kids' lunchboxes, or cranberry. You're feeling under the weather. It's always been the easy shortcut to getting fruit into your day, but in 2025, what's in the bottle doesn't match what's on the label. Real fruit juice is getting harder to come by. Extreme weather events, especially droughts and hurricanes, have devastated citrus groves in Florida and apple orchards across the Midwest. Yields are down, prices are up, and juice companies are feeling the squeeze. So what are they doing? Quietly switching to juice blends and fruit-flavored drinks that contain less and less actual juice. Many 100% juice bottles now contain as little as 35% real juice, topped off with water, artificial flavors, and synthetic vitamins to meet labeling loopholes. You'll also notice more from concentrate options. That's because companies are importing juice powder and concentrate from overseas where regulations are looser. And while it may still be technically juice, the nutritional value, flavor, and freshness are compromised. Even shelf life is deceptive. Bottled juices may last months, but once opened, they spoil quickly, and the additives can leave behind an off-putting aftertaste. If you're prepping for the long haul, powdered vitamin drink mixes or shelf-stable concentrates may be a smarter and more honest choice. Because in 2025, that bright label might say fresh squeezed, but what's inside is a far cry from the orchard. Number 13, eggs. Cracked supply, scrambled prices. For most households, eggs have always been the definition of reliability. Cheap, filling, packed with protein, you could feed a family on a dozen eggs and still have change left in your pocket. But in 2025, those days are gone. Eggs have quietly become one of the most unstable staples in the grocery store. It started with bird flu. In late 2023 and early 2024, multiple outbreaks swept through poultry farms across the U.S., wiping out millions of laying hens. Producers struggled to recover, and even now in 2025, many haven't rebuilt their flocks to full capacity. The result? Fewer eggs and far higher prices. In some areas, a single dozen eggs now sells for $6 to $8, even for non-organic options. And when supply dips again, like it does after every new outbreak, shelves go empty for weeks. But that's not the only issue. Farmers are also battling higher feed costs, rising labor shortages, and expensive upgrades to meet new biosecurity rules. All of this adds pressure to an already strained system. Meanwhile, some companies have turned to longer shelf life alternatives like liquid egg products or pre-cooked frozen egg, but these come with more preservatives, less flavor, and often significantly lower nutritional quality. Even the egg cartons have changed. Packaging is thinner, flimsier, and more prone to cracking during transport. And if you've bought eggs recently, you may have noticed shorter expiration dates and more. Variation in size and freshness. For preppers and planners, this is a serious concern. Eggs were once a go-to protein in every survival pantry, but their unpredictability now makes them risky for long-term food security. If you rely on eggs, consider alternatives: powdered eggs, canned egg substitutes, or better yet, backyard chickens, if your situation allows it, because in 2025, the humble egg is no longer simple. It's fragile, expensive, and often out of reach. Number 14, canned tomatoes. The acidic staple, losing its shelf strength. For decades, canned tomatoes were a prepper's dream. Cheap, versatile, long-lasting, perfect for stews, sauces, soups, and emergencies. But in 2025, this pantry staple is quietly becoming less reliable than we thought. The biggest issue? Acidity. Tomatoes are naturally acidic, and over time, that acid begins to eat away at the can's protective lining. The result is a metallic taste, texture breakdown, and in rare cases, spoilage, even before the expiration date. Manufacturers are aware of this and often use BPA-free linings to prevent corrosion. But with rising costs and raw material shortages, some producers are cutting corners on packaging quality. This means even sealed cans can start to degrade if stored too long. Or in poor conditions, there's also been a surge in price. Extreme heat in California and water restrictions in Spain and Italy have reduced tomato yields, driving up costs for canned goods across the board. A can that once cost 89 cents might now sell for $1.79, and the quality isn't necessarily better. If you rely on canned tomatoes as a cooking base, it's worth checking your pantry. Rotate stock regularly, store them in cool conditions, and inspect cans for bulges or rust. And for long-term prepping, consider tomato powder or freeze-dried tomato products. They're lighter, last longer, and won't turn metallic over time. Because even something as dependable as canned tomatoes can fall apart silently if you're not paying attention. Number 15, instant noodles, the budget that's losing its edge. Instant noodles have always been the go-to for tight budgets and long shelf lives. Quick to cook, easy to store, and surprisingly comforting when everything else feels uncertain. But in 2025, even this humble staple is starting to show cracks. First, let's talk quality. To keep prices low amid rising ingredient and shipping costs, many manufacturers are using lower-grade oils, artificial flavor boosters, and bulk fillers. The flavor packets, now packed with more MSG and less real seasoning, the noodles themselves, often fried in cheap palm oil, leaving a strange aftertaste and a heavier digestive toll. There have also been multiple health concerns. In early 2025, several brands were recalled due to contamination with ethylene oxide, a chemical banned in food products but found in some imported instant noodles. It shook public trust, especially in products coming from overseas. Even availability has shifted. Popular flavors are disappearing and portion sizes have shrunk without warning. Some brands have quietly reduced noodle volume by up to 20% while keeping the packaging identical. For short-term emergencies, instant noodles still have a role. But relying on them long-term? That's a gamble. If you're building a serious prepper pantry, consider replacing them with dried pasta, rice, or bulk ramen blocks without additives, paired with your own seasoning. Because while instant noodles may still be cheap, they're no longer simple or safe as they used to.